It is a rhinoceros shirt day, and we're live. It
Then you
is
disappeared. Oh, there you are. Now you're back. Okay.
Tuesday. Whoa, I disappeared. It
I
is
know.
Tuesday, November 17th, 2020, 5:01 p.m. It is a rhinoceros shirt day. It is an inside day at the cabin in the woods. It is a supremely windy day. I have spent the entire day on Zoom, which I have never done before, which is an exceedingly unpleasant experience. My idea of diversity today is doing something on Crowdcast instead of on Zoom. What else can I tell you about today? I think that's it because my mind is zoomed. So, Kate, what have you been up to today?
Um, I spent the day doing prep for Thanksgiving, which included the town one down from us, Eastham, is very famous for their turnips. And there is this old guy that sells turnips on the side of the road, like a giant pile of them that he just every day he packs up his turnips and then in his truck, and then every day he drives them back out and puts them on a table and sells them. And I went driving looking for him today, and it was too cold even for him to be outside. I know, so I drove around for like half an hour, and I was like, "Where is this guy?" Couldn't find him. So yeah, I made clam chowder instead out of clams that I had dug, and that was kind of fun. And
We are
yeah,
not,
that was the day.
and we are not allowed to have fun anymore. Though
Why?
we are allowed to make clam chowder out of clams we raked ourselves, and occasionally we send each other pictures of ourselves with mud and clam rakes. In lieu of fun, however, we do have Carrie Johnson,
Yay!
old friend of mine from like I have known literally my entire adulthood in Washington. Cub reporters together at Legal Times, and just have kind of never not been in touch since. Carrie Johnson, Justice Department reporter at National Public Radio. Welcome back to the show.
Happy to be a second-time guest. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah.
Marvelous
Well,
to see you both.
Well, we were debating DOJ stuff for a lot of time last week. And I guess, and on Friday, John Barrett and Ben were beating each other themselves up about not knowing that Bill Barr was going to be this bad. And then I was like, I really wonder what Carrie thinks about Bill Barr. And I don't think we asked her the last time she was on. And so I was kind of
Yeah, really interesting question. So you're not allowed to express your views, and so we're not going to ask you to express your view of Bill Barr. But I will say, have you been surprised by Bill Barr's performance in office? Or were you basically expecting the Bill Barr who showed up?
I was surprised in part because he surprised a lot of establishment Washington lawyers in the job, right? Early on, before his confirmation hearing, I did a piece on his role in the Iran-Contra pardons that President H.W. Bush did right before leaving office. And Barr gave a very revealing interview to the Miller Center at the University of Virginia, in which Barr basically said, listen, I was all in on those pardons. President Bush wanted to give maybe one person a pardon. And I said, no, in for a pound, in for a penny. So give all those guys pardons. And of course, the great controversy there is that a lot of people believe that President George H.W. Bush had some liability or legal jeopardy in the Iran-Contra matter that never truly came to light. And then he pardoned people who may have known more about that. And the parallel, especially now, it seems to me is striking because we're all waiting for President Trump to issue a bunch of lame duck pardons of a whole bunch of people in his administration, his friends. Some people like Andrew Weissman of the Mueller team have told me they think President Trump's going to try to preemptively pardon himself in some way. So I'm looking for all of that. But even though I took note of that example from Iran-Contra back in the early 90s, I did not appreciate the extent to which Barr felt comfortable criticizing his own career workforce. And the moment that really sticks out to me was earlier this year. I was watching, and at NPR, often we will be like on the early shift. So we'll wake up at like maybe 3:45 or 4 a.m.
That
and I was
sounds
watching
terrible.
that day, that night, a speech that Barr gave on, that was televised and on Zoom or something, to the conservative school Hillsdale College. And that's the speech where Barr compared some of his prosecutors to headhunters, saying they were not after justice, they were after attacking individual targets and building cases against them no matter what they did. And Barr also in that speech said that prosecutors needed supervision and that they were like Montessori school children. And I thought to myself, oh, shiz. And it was like after 8 o'clock at night, and I was kind of tired. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. This speech started out to be about like the Jackson speech that Ben knows so well and has quoted so many times in the Great Hall, the role of the prosecutor. And then it took a turn, and I was like left standing with my mouth open in my apartment thinking like, wake up, because news is happening, and type it down real fast. So that was a different side of Bill Barr.
When was that? When?
A couple months ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not very long ago. And it was around the time, of course, when people started speaking out against him. We had those prosecutors testify at an open hearing in Congress, and we had these fellows write letters to the editor and op-eds and stuff. It's been remarkable. The on the record institutional resistance to this attorney general is nothing I have seen ever in Washington.
Yeah. Right.
And I think my feelings aside, if I have them, that is super newsworthy.
And at the end of the day, I think there's two possible explanations for that degree of hashtag resistance among career prosecutors. One is Bill Barr, the one that I would subscribe to, is that, Bill Barr is actually behaving extravagantly, and career prosecutors can handle Ed Meese, they can handle, the eccentricities of the Janet Renos of the world just fine. They, don't go ballistic about John Ashcroft. But there's something genuinely different about this guy in the context of Donald Trump's presidency. The other explanation is they are revealing the fact that they are less apolitical than we sometimes assume, and that Bill Barr is the political leadership of the department. His job is to be political. Their job is to salute and do their jobs, and they're not doing it. They're actually resisting in the way that you would not expect career officials to behave. And I assume that's, in his Hillsdale speech, Barr said, hey, look, they have politics. They're allowed to have politics. They're supposed to, keep it to themselves. I have politics too. I'm not supposed to keep it to myself, right? And so, in my gut, I have no doubt that we're in category A, not category B. But is that just a judgment on my part, or is there some way to actually know that or measure that? Whether the deviation is in the behavior of the career officials or in the behavior of the political leadership?
Well, listen, past DOJs, the W. Bush DOJ, and some of what happened in the Civil Rights Division and the speaking out by people in the Civil Rights Division and people who had left civil rights and spoke out, we expect some of that. That's what happens with a change in administration. But the level of speaking out and where it's coming from in this administration is different. So we had a lawyer in the antitrust division We had criminal division prosecutors. We had people from U.S. attorneys' offices. We had people in the civil division. We have had people across the entire building and units in the building that have spoken out about various things, whether it be interference to allegedly help the president's friends, or the president's own tweets, or Barr's misstatements about widespread voting fraud and vote by mail fraud. These are things that we don't see often. And the other thing we don't see often, Ben, is, in the past, administrations, every single one of them that I've covered, has had senior DOJ officials do some traveling to swing states in advance of elections to have a little press conference about crime, or give some grant money to help victims of crime or survivors or stuff like that. In this case, we had the Attorney General giving very on-the-nose statements about the election and the manner in which the election was about to be conducted, that were not based on fact, but as he told one of our hosts and other interviewers, it was common sense that there was going to be widespread vote by mail fraud.
Common sense is what you use when you don't have any information.
It's kind of like an adverb. Like when you say something is clearly this, you just kind of know that obviously it's not clearly it's
exactly.
Well, these things were not normal. And I would like to say this too, that over the last 3.5 years of the Trump presidency, we have seen how Donald Trump manages to outrage and provoke some of the best people to say things that are not wise. I'm thinking here of the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who made some remarks about Donald Trump that probably she shouldn't have made, and she later kind of semi-apologized for. But many other people. And Barr, I think, is a figure almost at that level, where sometimes he provokes people into saying things that they shouldn't say, and on balance would be better and more prudent if they avoided. But the facts on the ground alone of that outspoken nature of the people in his building who have identified patterns of behavior and actions by him are something I have not seen before, and I expect this next Justice Department to have to live with and contend with for a good long time.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ben.
So let's talk about the transition, because
that was what I wanted to talk about.
There's going to be a contrary to the reigning mythology, Donald Trump did not win re-election. Joe Biden is going to be president. He's going to get to choose an attorney general, and he's going to get to choose a bunch of assistant attorneys general, a deputy attorney general, an associate attorney general, 94 U.S. attorneys, I believe, and odds and ends, he may end up picking another FBI director, depending on both his inclinations and the president's self-control. So first of all, sort of the Twitter assumption is that Sally Yates is going to be attorney general. Do you share that assumption? And if not, who do you think Joe Biden will be looking for?
I think that there are a number of people under consideration, and I don't think anybody has the job in the bag yet. I think Biden has said that diversity is very important to him in his cabinet. So the senior ranks of the Justice Department, all those Senate confirmed jobs, AG, Deputy AG, Associate, which is like the number 3 job, the Civil Rights Division, the Solicitor General, the person who interfaces with the Supreme Court, all those are very large jobs. And I think that there's been pressure so far on the transition team to demonstrate the kind of allegiance to diversity and inclusion that helped Biden so much in the campaign. So I think there's been, a bit of a tug of war on that. I do think there is widespread agreement that at this moment, at this Justice Department, that you need to bring in people who have had experience there, seasoned experience in the past. And it's hard to disagree with that, given the morale and the state of affairs over the last 3.5 years. So then
Carrie, what counts as experience? So if you were an AUSA 25 years ago you get to say for the rest of your life, former federal prosecutor Carrie Johnson, right? And a lot of people play that game.
Yeah.
But I would argue that is not the kind of Justice Department experience that we're talking about when we say this. Mm-hmm. What counts as experience in the department that qualifies you to, say, be nominated as Deputy Attorney General or Attorney General?
Well, one of the odd, I'll put it this way, one of the odd or unusual things we have now is that Bill Barr has never prosecuted a case, and he's the Attorney General of the United States. And Jeffrey Rosen, the Deputy Attorney General, has likewise not prosecuted a case. So when we see examples of them overruling or demanding more evidence in some cases that line prosecutors, career prosecutors want to bring, I think that sticks in the craw of a lot of people who currently work at DOJ and who used to. And so I think that to have a job like a Deputy Attorney General job, it helps to have been an AUSA, but you also need management experience, because that job, as you know, is the day-to-day chief operating officer of an organization that consists of well over 100,000 people and a multi-billion-dollar budget. And I also think, last time around, I was thinking about this, Ben, like 10, 11 years ago, we were talking about people who had experience at justice after 9/11. Well, we're now almost 20 years from 9/11. You have to have experience in the modern national security focused Justice Department. And there aren't as many people around with that. There are plenty of people, but they're more recent people. There are people in their 40s and 50s, maybe low 60s, not some of those men and women who call themselves former prosecutors, and they were, but have not been inside DOJ since, the early 90s or mid 90s. It's a different place than it used to be in a lot of ways.
And just to foot stomp Carrie's point, the Deputy Attorney General, that is a hard job. Yeah. People don't last in it generally more than a couple of years. And it kind of makes you or breaks you there are people who come out of being DAG and their prestige is very enhanced. And there are people who come out of it and you kind of speak their names in hushed tones for the rest of their lives. I won't actually name any of them, Paul McNulty. There are people who are diminished by the role. And I do think this time there's going to be a real premium on it.
Yeah. So I have a strange question, and John Barrett couldn't answer this on Friday, and I was thinking that maybe, to your point about how the Justice Department has changed, I think it was my first time in Maine Justice in February when I went for the Section 230 information, that really strange thing that they put on around Section 230. And I was telling Ben and I was telling John that, John was describing the grandeur of Maine Justice, and I was like, I had gone through this back entrance and blah, blah. And then we had ended up in this place. And I was blown away actually by the number of pictures of Donald Trump that were hung in prominent places, and the AG and I mean, just little things, it was in a coffee break room. I think I remember walking by and kind of peeking in and being weird. Is it always like that? And so I actually wanted to, and I know that it's in the executive branch, you have the picture of the president. That's not totally berserko. I just was wondering if this is if there was a little bit of dear leader kind of aspect of it to me that kind of just hit weird. And I didn't know if it was different with the Trump administration.
No, it actually, that is the case in all of the administrations I've covered. There's a photo of the president and then a photo of the attorney general. And it's in a lot of places. It's where visitors go to check in and show their IDs. It's in public spaces throughout the building. It's not new to the Trump administration. It's just DOJ is actually a strangely, maybe not so strange. It's a hierarchical place. And in some instances, the attorney general is a celebrity. The way that maybe Hillary Clinton was a celebrity Secretary of State, Eric Holder was a celebrity Attorney General, right?
Yep.
Alberto Gonzalez was not a celebrity Attorney General, but
I was going to ask that.
and you could argue that Bill Barr has made himself a household name in a lot of households around the country.
Yeah.
It's just because DOJ touches so many darn things about the way we live our lives. They're involved in so many things.
Well, that's the thing. I could understand State Department having that up. I could understand FBI having that up. There's something ubiquitous about DOJ and the line
all federal buildings have pictures of the president.
I know, but I mean, like, I guess I know. I'm not trying to sound like total naive here. Like, I haven't been in any federal buildings. I have seen all of the, but I don't know. There's just the line that it walks. I just was interested to see all of that. I don't know. It just kind of just struck me as it just struck me as an interesting part of federal government that if you haven't spent tons of time in federal government might come across as surprising.
The other thing, I don't think they had this at your Section 230 event. I wasn't there. I was still on break. But, they do this honor guard before most of their public ceremonies and awards. And, it's literally an honor guard with the music. And there's this whole pageantry element to it with the flags. And that was not something I had been used to. They also have this kind of odd little tradition, Kate, of when you leave, they hold a ceremony for you in the Great Hall, which is one of the most beautiful and historic places I've been to cover. And they call it a chairing ceremony. And your friends pay money to buy the chair that you used to sit at in the cabinet meetings. And then they give you the chair. They're all
super cool.
Right?
I didn't know about that. That's neat.
So I remember this because I was attending the Eric Holder chair ceremony. I was at NPR by then. At the time, I had left the Post by then, and I was plugged into the box and I was recording. And I had my headphones on, these big professional headphones, and I was listening, and it was a ceremony, so my attention kind of veered. And all of a sudden, this sound came through my ears. It was so loud and so powerful. I jumped out of my chair. It was Aretha Franklin. They had enlisted Aretha Franklin to sing a song. I think President Obama got Aretha Franklin to do a song for Eric Holder. And I was just like, what is happening right now? So that doesn't happen every day at the Justice. I don't expect Bill Barr to get Aretha has left us. May she rest in peace. I'm not sure we're going to get a musical performance. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get a
Garth Brooks.
A pop culture celebration, like John Legend's not going to show up for Bill Barr.
Right. I wonder who that would be though for Barr. I don't know. I'll think about that just in case. It may come up.
So we have an active debate going on in the chat here about what the right answer to this question is. Now, again, I don't want to ask you for your nominations for Attorney General, but you've been around the department a while, and if Joe Biden called you and said, I don't know the right model that I should be looking at here. You got your Democratic senator model, Doug Jones, that's the sort of John Ashcroft model. Doug Jones actually lost to a living person, which is more than Ashcroft. So he's clearly more qualified than Ashcroft was. Ashcroft lost to a dead guy. You got your former Deputy Attorney General model, Sally Yates. You got your, U.S. Attorney model in the Preet Bhararas of the world. You got these crazy people like Wittes who were saying, pull somebody off the bench. And I've mentioned two people in that regard, Merrick Garland and Randy Moss. I could actually make a pretty good case for Patty Millett, too, although she doesn't have the Justice Department depth that the other two do. How should I think about this as a sort of model? Like, we know what the model of the Secretary of State is, right? We know what the model of the Secretary of Defense is, but what's the right model for Joe Biden to be thinking about an attorney general at this time in history?
This is a hard one because the problems of the DOJ are so enormous right now, and it may be, there are going to be money problems, and there are morale problems, and there are external public confidence problems, and there are internal public confidence. There's a lot of problems, right? And so a lot of people, including yourself, have proposed we need like the post-Watergate model. We need a figure of nonpartisan excellence, like Levy did in the post-Watergate era. So I get that. I get that idea. I'm not sure, given how quickly the DOJ moves and will need to move on national security issues, on reversing policy decisions of the Trump administration, on changing positions in litigation, on uncovering legal opinions issued by the Trump administration but not made public. I'm not sure that that would require somebody who has more recent direct experience in DOJ. I can see an argument for that. I could also see an argument for trying to make sure that person, whoever it is, doesn't have a reputation in politics at all, which is, I think, part of what you're getting at with the judge thing, right?
Yeah, although, I mean, I think like somebody like Randy Moss or Merrick Garland, it's not that they don't have, like, they're known to have, like, they're known to be Democrats, at least in orientation. I don't know what either of their current voter registration is, but Randy Moss was a political appointee in the Clinton administration, ran OLC. He was associated with a very democratic law practice at Wilmer, and Merrick Garland was sort of the right-hand man of Jamie Gorelick when she was running the Justice Department. So it's not like these were people who there's no party valence associated with them, but it's a valence kind of like Ed Levy's. He was the president of the University of Chicago or the dean of the Chicago Law School. It's a conservative-ish law school. He's understood to be some kind of conservative, but most of all, he was the president of the University of Chicago and a figure of immense esteem in scholarship and law. And people could accept that he was making independent judgments. And I think, nobody who's learned in the law will look at a decision by Merrick Garland and say, I wonder how influenced by politics that was, because that's not who Merrick Garland is. And I do think
I think you're misreading the political room, because no matter what this nominee will bring to the table, there's a segment of the political opposition that's going to throw a whole bunch of mud no matter what. Especially.
Oh, every attorney general gets accused of three things. One, politicizing the Justice Department. Two, being the most political attorney general ever. And three, acting as the president's personal lawyer. It is a given that the next attorney general, whoever he or she is, however excellent the person is, will be accused of those things in a matter of months. It won't take long. That's not the test. The test is how much traction those claims get. And
how much traction where? Because we are in a disembodied information economy, right? I spent some time yesterday reading Obama's lengthy interview with Jeff Goldberg in The Atlantic, and one of the most compelling points that he made, it's been made before, is just there are people who are not going to believe the facts in front of them. And so I just, I think picking someone on that basis alone is going to be challenging for this administration coming in part because then a lot of the people that you mentioned, not all of them are older white men. And
Yeah, but not all of them.
Older white, I know I gave you a caveat, but older white men are not what delivered this election to the president-elect, and older white men are not the future of his political party. And at this moment, when we are still seeing people in the streets protesting for racial justice because we had to witness people of color getting killed by police officers on video, I think those appeals for a diverse cabinet are powerful ones.
I actually completely agree with that. I think there's the argument for diversity in the cabinet, given, well, on the merits, first of all, is extremely high. It's a high salient. It should be a high salience variable for any administration. Given the composition of the electorate that elected Joe Biden, it is all the more so. And also, as a, honestly, quite apart from such political calculations, the argument for it as a rebuke to Trump, as an alternative, to, throwing a cabinet at the country that really doesn't look like the country that is a vehicle for a movement based on racial resentment. The argument for diversity in response to that is extremely strong. So I agree with you completely. And I think so the older component, I don't think you can get away from. You're looking for people with extensive experience in the department, and that's going to select for an older demographic. The male component is actually, I don't think, should be a particularly strong effect. There are a lot of highly qualified women, and actually the argument for for ethnic diversity. The Justice Department is not the most diverse place in the world, but it's not the least diverse place in the world either. And there are enormous numbers of people who have, served with great distinction without looking like the portraits in the Justice Department. So I think that is very doable. I do think, and this may reflect my sense of what an Ed Levy character is, I do think when I think of who could be the Ed Levy of our time, the names that come to mind, I listed a bunch of them on Twitter earlier today. They do skew male, which maybe simply reflects my lack of imagination, or the lack of imagination at the particular moment at which I tweeted those names. And part of the question is what counts as diversity, of course. I mean, if you nominated Preet Bharara, that would certainly be the first time you'd nominated anybody named Bharara or Preet, right? And so there is a question of what counts, but I agree with you. It should be a high salience variable.
So we're having a little debate, and Joyce in the chat just raised the question of Obama for Supreme Court, and I just was kind of like, no, Obama's never going to go to the Supreme Court. But then I kind of was like, is Obama ever going to go back into government again? And I wonder that question. I was kind of thinking, I was like, well, why would he constrain himself to be in government and to be in some way? when he has such high impact just as a human being, like doing whatever it is that he's going to do.
He's going to write another book. The one that's just coming out is 768 pages. He's got a lot of work to do.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
took him a long time. He was late.
But like, no, seriously, do you think that you think that there's any potential for either of the Obamas in government again, in service again, directly, like being hired back to the state? No,
I don't see it.
I don't either. At all.
Who was the last president who went back into government after service as president? Was it William Howard Taft?
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I mean, because he became a justice.
He became Chief Justice. But I think, and he hated being president and loved being Chief Justice. It was kind of like,
and that's what I also said to Joyce. There's no way, like the granularity of doctrine. Like I don't think Obama wants to write or like even think about those types of. I don't think I'm like he's brilliant, but I don't see him as being like in that way. I don't know. I like that would like pique his interest even. Anyway,
I am. Let's put it this way. If you're a Supreme Court justice, you are confined by the question in front of you.
Yes.
Who wants to be confined by the question in front of him after he's been president of the United States?
That's kind of exactly. I mean, there's just no. It's not a fit. It's not a very unless you like that, which Taft did. But I don't think that there's any type of, I think that that's exactly right. I'm glad I asked, though, because I was like, people have raised his name for attorney general. They've raised it for various things. And I'm just like, no. And, like, interestingly, you know, as you said, like, but I do wonder about Michelle. So that's kind of interesting because you saw, obviously, HRC had a huge role in Clinton's entire presidency. And then, of course, she went back as Secretary of State and like, all of the things she did, she continued. And it was like theoretically a march towards a presidency. I wonder if she's seeing herself as fully retired and if Michelle Obama has any designs on that type of service, but I don't think she does either because she's never done any of that.
I've never met her and I'm not close to her friends, so I don't know, but I take Michelle Obama at her word, which is that at every stage in her life as an adult, she has not only resisted political office for herself, she has resisted her husband's attempts at political office until I guess the second time he ran for the White House. But these are people who have enormous power using the bully pulpit and their almost matchless communication skills.
Yeah.
So why
shackle yourself? Yeah. I agree completely.
All right, let's go to audience questions. And I want to say I'm not sure we have ever had a situation in which one question has so dramatically outvoted all the other questions. But John Bordeaux's question today has, 30 upvotes, and no other one has more than like 7 or 8. So I think we've got to start with John today. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Carrie. Thanks for doing this. So apparently Senator Graham, a guy who chairs a powerful Senate committee or two, calls up the Secretary of State of Georgia and with witnesses on the line asks, hey, is it possible that if there's a county where there's a lot of signature mismatches, you can just throw out the entire county's worth of votes? He's changed the story a bit. Now he's saying he called other states and the states are saying, no, not really. I noticed that legal Twitter has already marched Senator Graham to the gallows, throwing out felony references like confetti. But putting aside the current DOJ preferences in what they choose to do or not, has he actually put himself in any legal jeopardy doing this?
I've got to analyze what he said or didn't say. What he said, if there's a transcript or a written record of it. The Georgia Secretary of State was on All Things Considered on NPR this evening, but I didn't get a chance to listen to that interview before joining you. aside from legal jeopardy, it's interesting because depending on the composition of the Senate after the Georgia runoffs upcoming, Lindsey Graham will either remain in charge of the Judiciary Committee or go over to lead another committee. But this seems to be is a matter that Democrats in Congress would like to probe and investigate. I think it's so, it's got to be uncomfortable and awkward and weird to want to investigate another member of your body. I don't know that that's going to happen, but it seems to me that if you disagree with what Lindsey Graham did and said, once that's determined, for a politician, a political consequence is usually the most effective as opposed to a law enforcement consequence. Of course, he was just reelected.
I was just about to say that. I was like, it's bad news given the recent events. Ben, you're muted.
Apparently I was muted. So I've thought about this today, and I actually cannot identify a statute that this would even plausibly have violated. And I know that like lots of people on Twitter want this to be a crime, and but let's go over the allegation at its worst. And just to be clear, if you're a senator and you're listening, should you get on the phone and try to induce a Secretary of State supervising a recount to throw out lawfully counted votes? No, this is not good practice. You shouldn't do it. Bad, bad, bad. And should people be mad at Lindsey Graham? Yes. But what is he alleged to have done? He's alleged to have asked a Secretary of State whether it would be legally proper to discard votes under a certain set of circumstances, and been told no. He is not alleged, as I understand it, to have said, please do this. Moreover, it's not clear that if the Secretary of State endeavored to do that, he would be violating any law, right? He might not be faithfully executing his office. So I think it's an example of the closest example I would give to it is it's a little bit like a chant of lock her up, to an official who's not actually gonna lock her up. And like I can say to Carrie Johnson, Carrie, could you please report that Kate is a felon and I am the Messiah. But that would be trying to induce Carrie to do her job really badly and unethically. But I'm not sure how that could be understood to be a criminal offense, and nobody has cited me to a statute that I look at and say, that would be a crime, the crime of inducing somebody to do their job really improperly.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This kind of is like, this is in the category, I think exactly what Carrie said, which is like, it's in the category of not everything is illegal. Like, not every bad thing is illegal. Like, everything, it's not like, there's plenty of, and not even necessarily like, I don't know if you would call it like, I guess it's unethical to ask, but like, it's also still like, maybe even not it's just like not a thing that you should do or encourage. Like, I don't know. For various reasons, not just ethical ones. And so there is, I have to mention something really quickly. Since John Bordeaux is on, and I have to thank him, which he has made, there are now available for your purchase in our shop that John curates and commissions things to be done. There are now, at long last, glasses that have the In Lieu of Fun logo on them for purchase. There's a limited number of them, and so I'm told that you have to buy them quickly if you would like to get some. and they are etched with the chipmunk baby cannon logo. It's kind of amazing. And yeah, so I just dropped the link in the chat, so go there. Sorry to interrupt with a commercial, but John worked so hard on getting those done, and I was excited to see them, and they're awesome. So yeah.
Thank you, John. All right. The next question goes to the great Ruth Greenblatt. Ruth, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My question is whether some of the career staff at the Justice Department who may have left in protest or been pushed out, could they return under a Biden administration?
That's a good question. I think they could. There's precedent for that, but I'm not sure to what extent the Justice Department is going to be hampered by budget problems in the coming year, and creating slots for people who have already left, if the slots have not been filled, is going to be it may be a numbers game. But I think that historically there's been a fair amount of turnover at DOJ, and there may be, I haven't looked at this recently, a number of unfilled jobs. But, as you know, a lot of people on this call know, being hired by the government can take a very long time. So I'm not sure how quickly they can get up to speed and get those, as my mom would say, butts in chairs. I don't know. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, and the people in question are not all similarly situated, right? There are people who are understood to be martyrs by the party that's coming in. There are also people who are almost as disliked by the people coming in as they are by the people going out. And those are not... And then there are people who are, if you think about the DHS recent whistleblowers, these are people who I think a lot of Democrats have a lot of mixed feelings about. They stuck around for a very long time. And by the way, they're conservatives of a type that Democratic administrations don't generally hire anyway. And so, while I happen to think what Olivia Troy did is extremely moving and was really, really powerful, she is not the kind of person who a Democratic administration is going to hire anyway, right? So that is a different situation than a Alex or Yevgeny Vindman situation, right? And so it really is a you can't ask the question about people in general. They're very specific situations.
Yeah. Who's next? We have good questions coming up.
David Botts, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon. Carrie, it's so great to see you. You've been in my ears in the mornings and for many, many years. So it's fabulous to hear and see you. As a general matter, to what degree does the administration impact or influence the culture of the U.S. Department of Justice? So that's part A. Part B is, how has the Trump administration been similar or different in terms of impact to the DOJ culturally?
Those are excellent questions. When I came back from my break this summer, I was starting to think about the transition, if there were a change in government. And I was starting to think about the kinds of things that would need to happen to restore some calm and confidence at justice. And one of the things that surprised me most is that people who've been around the department for a long time really think that the senior leadership of the department, the ones who are confirmed by the Senate, set a remarkably important tone for the culture of the whole building. And some of these people said to me, yeah, I don't think you need a whole bunch of new laws and rules. You probably need some new laws and some new rules, most identified brilliantly by by Jack Goldsmith and Bob Bauer in the Lawfare book they just published. But people like Bill Weld, the former governor of Massachusetts, a Republican, who himself quit the Justice Department in protest in the 1980s during the Meese administration because he thought there were some dirty dealings allegedly going on there with politics. Bill Weld really thinks that if you get in a new attorney general and a deputy with the best interests of that institution at heart, that people inside the department, tens of thousands of them, will be relieved and will be cheered and will want to go about doing their jobs in a nonpartisan and useful way. I'm not sure that changing, the top 8 people in the department will significantly improve morale that's been degraded based on my reporting for 3.5 years. But maybe steady leadership over time will make that big a difference. I'm very curious to see what happens there. And I'm starting to think about ways to measure it. I might want to talk with Ben about that moving forward because he's done some really interesting surveys and data work in the past. The other thing is the culture of the Justice Department now. The culture of the Justice Department now is hard to sweep with a broad brush because there's so many people in some U.S. attorneys' offices around the country, and in some parts of the Justice Department, like the parts that do consumer fraud lawsuits and some healthcare fraud litigation, they have not been as bothered, generally speaking, as units like civil rights and voting rights and even career criminal prosecutors have been. But I will tell you that one thing that I heard changed a lot of minds was June 1st, that episode at Lafayette Square here in Washington, where the Attorney General and military leaders stood beside the president in front of the Episcopal Church here after protesters were roughed up and sprayed with pepper spray or tear gas.
Yeah.
That led a lot of people to think about leaving the department who had managed to stick around for the first part of this administration. That created such a level of upset and despair even that I'm not sure that people have gotten over it to this day. So that was big. Somebody asked me in the chat where Bill Weld said that. Bill Weld told me that in a story I did for NPR in the last 3 months. I will try to look it up if I can and put the link in the chat, but you can Google it too.
Yeah. So apparently we're also getting breaking news. Oh, Ben is back, but we're getting breaking news that Chuck Grassley has coronavirus.
Oh, no.
Is that what it was?
He's quarantined. Yeah. Are you sure? He was quarantining because he had contact with somebody.
Apparently CNN just... I am not breaking any news. There is other breaking news that I am reporting on in our weird little In Lieu of Fun show. But CNN is reporting that he just got tested.
And that's terrible. I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know, it's really too bad. He's much too old to get that. So that's pretty terrible. Ben, are you there? Because I just see you're at the law.
I am back.
Signal. Oh, good. Okay.
I am back. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Do you guys have any expectation that Bill Barr might be pardoned? And if so, what do you think he might be pardoned for?
I have strong feelings about this question.
Can I add on a question to this? Can I a plus?
Please.
Okay, so also, what if Trump did something completely bonkers and just surplus pardoned, pardoned everyone he had touched, really, because we're talking about, isn't it be crazy if he pardoned, but if he's in for one, why not, in for a penny, in for a pound, why not just pardon everyone that might potentially have any type of anything against them? What is stopping him? That is my addendum.
A general amnesty. So let's talk about the Bill Barr question first.
Yes, yes.
I am confident that, so I have gotten Bill Barr wrong all along the way. So everybody should take my thoughts about Bill Barr with the appropriate giant pillar of salt of the sort that Lot's wife became in the desert. Look, Bill Barr is an extremely proud individual who believes he's right. And he believes he is, you can see the sanctimony and conviction dripping off of him whenever he talks. And I don't believe he would seek or want a pardon, and nor do I think, I think he will proudly stand by everything he's done. And that's my read on Bill Barr. As to general amnesty, nah, Trump's not. He's much more self-interested than that. He doesn't care what happens to his people. What do you think, Carrie?
When I talked with Andrew Weissman, the former Mueller prosecutor, he expected pardons of Trump himself, Trump's family members, people in the Trump organization, and maybe somebody like Michael Flynn, depending on the way Judge Sullivan rules on that case. I'm not sure what this administration will do, but because I'm never sure exactly what this administration will do, I think in my head and sometimes pre-write various scenarios just to be safe. Because whenever I think it's going to be quiet, the president tweets something at 6 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night, and life is...
Carrie, you remind me of like the Queen's Gambit. Like you have all of these different games like already played out in your head, and you're just waiting. You're like, it's like boring for you. You've got the moves. You're just like, come at me. There's like pre-written
right.
half the next presidency.
Pat Gunn, the penultimate question is yours. Ooh, except that I just removed Pat Gunn from the screen, having said that. So let's give Chris Argyris the penultimate question while we bring back poor Pat Gunn after his summary dismissal.
All right. Hi, Carrie. So my question is, to what extent does a president's decision to not look back on a potential crimes of the last administration affect the DOJ, career prosecutors, and staff, including the FBI? If Biden follows through on his professed preference to just move on from Trump, what is the responsibility of DOJ, career prosecutors, and the FBI to continue to investigate and prosecute crimes that have yet to be charged or even uncovered?
This is an excellent question. It's a really tough one. Jack Goldsmith has told me, and I think other people, that he thinks it's one of the toughest challenges of the next Justice Department. Biden has said he wants to move forward, but he's also said that he will leave these decisions in the hands of his attorney general, and he will not meddle with them. The problem, as some analysts have pointed out, is that the way some of the existing cases have been handled is irregular. Irregular being a term of art, right? So like the Michael Flynn handling was irregular. The Roger Stone handling was irregular. And there are a number of investigations, including ones reported recently by the New York Times of Ryan Zinke, and a bunch of referrals that were made by the Senate Intelligence Committee to the Justice Department about people like Eric Prince and Jared Kushner, where no public action appears to have been taken. And I wonder how many of those things the next Justice Department can just leave hanging there to wither. It's a lot of things. And I think what really smart prosecutors are telling me, former prosecutors are telling me, is it depends on the nature of the individual case and the facts developed and evidence developed in those individual cases. So I think this is going to be a tug of war for the first 6 months, at least, of the new Biden administration, maybe longer. But listen, I remember how outraged people in the CIA were, and then Vice President Dick Cheney was, when Eric Holder decided to reopen a very limited investigation of the people who destroyed those CIA torture videotapes and the people
asking John Durham to review the work of Chuck Rosenberg.
Yes. And so people were on the ceiling angry about that. That was a very limited review. This is a set of issues. I'm not even sure how big the set is, because a lot of it is still secret, that are going to be a challenge for this new administration.
Pat Gunn, you get the last question, and this time I will actually let you ask it without making you vanish in a puff of smoke.
Howdy. So I have one that I think Ben accepted, and one which maybe he didn't. So I'll go with the if Jeff Sessions had stayed on, should we have expected him to have been substantially different from Barr? And that with both Barr and Sessions, we've seen a very limited independence. They haven't been clearly as independent as we might have liked, but both of them have at times shown a little bit of a gap between them and the president's maximalist priorities. And I'm wondering, do you think that they would have differed on these points?
I think so. I think so, and I think I have some evidence in my back pocket to prove it. But I don't know the panoply, the full picture of what criminal matters crossed Jeff Sessions' desk. What I do know is that after a long time of hemming and hawing, Jeff Sessions actually did recuse himself from the Mueller investigation, and that was major, and that was his original sin in Donald Trump's eyes. And I do know that Jeff Sessions, generally speaking, respected the work of career prosecutors. It was unusual for him to question them directly, as he sometimes did, about the nature of their cases. But I haven't seen allegations about Jeff Sessions reaching into cases involving somebody like Roger Stone or Michael Flynn and trying to get rid of them or appoint additional investigators to investigate them. I don't know if he had survived in the job longer, whether Sessions would have succumbed to that kind of pressure. But there were lines that Jeff Sessions wouldn't cross. There were plenty of lines where Jeff Sessions, there were plenty of areas where Jeff Sessions went farther than Donald Trump might go on immigration and other policy matters. But I'm not sure what he would have done with some of these criminal cases.
If I had to guess, just to kind of, I would have always, everyone gives Ben a hard time about his predictions on Bill Barr, but I would have, if I had to choose between Barr and Sessions in terms of who would have really kind of warped the Justice Department, I would have picked Sessions in a heartbeat. And I think he didn't do nothing, but he wasn't I think that this, what about you? Do you think that there was that pretty much that kind of period exactly what you thought it was going to be?
I would answer your question with a question. How many current prosecutors and Justice Department lawyers testified at whistleblower hearings in Congress or wrote letters to the editor about Jeff Sessions when he was the Attorney General of the United States? Can you think of any?
Ben, you're muted. You're muted. Oh no.
I would just add to that Jeff Sessions was not a powerful personality.
Yes.
He was a highly ideological person who seemed to spend a lot of time really hating immigrants. But he was not a strong leader. He was not a dynamic figure. He was not a forceful intellectual interlocutor. And he was not combative with respect to the career folks. Bill Barr probably has 25 IQ points on Jeff Sessions, and he really believes certain things. And I just think he's a much more powerful figure. So I missed most of what Carrie said because my internet went out again, but I don't think Jeff Sessions would have been anything like what Bill Barr.
I think Carrie was on her way to Socratic methoding me into saying what you said. Is that right? Yes. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. It was it's a wonderful point. I think not as powerful a figure, but more in part because I think that he's not as powerful a figure, but because he is so ideological, and I think that that's what was so deceptive about Barr, I guess, ultimately.
We're going to leave it there. Carrie Johnson, sorry for the internet disruptions from the cabin in the woods. Thanks for joining us. It's great to see your face.
It's great to see and hear you both, and thank you for your excellent questions.
You're so awesome, Carrie. Thank you so much for coming.
Kate, who is our guest tomorrow?
We don't have one yet.
I think we do. I think Vladik is joining us tomorrow.
Oh, is he? Great. I really
yeah,
want that.
I think we have Vladik tomorrow, and we have Alessandro Nivola on Thursday, and that'll all get started 22 hours and 54 minutes from now. And until then, we don't have fun anymore, nor do we have consistent internet at the cabin in the woods. But at least today, I was here. See you tomorrow.
Bye, Ben.